All right. Well, so John Durham, who's been engaged in this never-ending investigation of the Russia investigation, he recently submitted his final report, which we've discussed, and the final report didn't come up with anything new. I mean, we already knew that the Trump-Russia investigation was baseless, but at least we had a U.S. government body, Durham's office, confirming that. He said that the investigation was baseless, shouldn't have been launched, and it was continued with fraud. The U.S., the FBI ignored all this countervailing evidence. They ignored intelligence which they received at the very start of the entire Trump-Russia investigation, that Hillary Clinton was plotting to frame Trump as a Russian asset. So it confirmed all that. But he didn't go to all the places where he should have gone. He didn't actually touch the allegation, the foundational allegation that Russia hacked the DNC, even though, as I've written about recently, he actually uncovered new evidence showing that that was a scam, a Clinton campaign scam. So anyway, he appeared before Congress, and it was a kind of an underwhelming appearance. Democrats, members of Blue Anon, attacked him for daring to challenge their conspiracy theory, and they clung to anything they could to make the conspiracy theory look credible. But here's an exchange where basically Durham discusses, I think, one of the most important parts of his investigation, which is that the FBI knew that Clinton was plotting to frame Trump as a Russian asset. But instead of investigating the Clinton campaign, they used her material, like the Steele dossier, for leads and even surveillance warrants.
2016, did our government receive intelligence that suggested Secretary Clinton had approved a plan to tie President Trump to Russia?
Yes.
Was that intelligence important enough for Director Brennan to go brief the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States, the Attorney General of the United States, and the Director of the FBI?
Yes.
And was that intelligence put then into a memorandum, a referral memorandum?
Yes.
And was that memorandum then given to Director Comey and Agent Strzok?
That's who it was addressed to, yes.
Did Director Comey share that memorandum with the FISA court?
I'm sorry,
Did he share that memorandum with the FISA court? Did Director Comey do that?
I'm not aware of that if he did.
Did he share it with the lawyers preparing the FISA application?
Not to my knowledge.
Did he share it with the agents on the case, working the Crossfire Hurricane case?
No.
Didn't share it with the agents on the case. Can you tell the committee what happened when you took that referral memo and shared it with one of those agents, specifically Supervisory Special Agent number 1?
We interviewed the first supervisor of the Crossfire investigation, the operational person. We showed him the intelligence information. He indicated he had never seen it before. He immediately became emotional, got up and left the room with his lawyer, spent some time in the hallway, came back.
He was ticked off, wasn't he?
Yes.
He was ticked off because this is something he should have had as an agent on the case, is important information that the director of the FBI kept from the people doing the investigation.
The information was kept from him.
So for people who find that hard to follow, Durham's being asked about this core finding that the FBI knew from the start. They received warnings at the highest level from the CIA that they had intelligence that Clinton was plotting to frame Trump as a Russian asset. And this intelligence was so important that it was briefed to Obama and Biden in late July 2016, right when the Russia investigation kicked off. And what Durham is saying here is that instead of doing anything with that, the FBI buried it. So Comey got a specific warning about this, and he buried it. They didn't tell anybody on the Crossfire Hurricane team. They buried it. And then when a member of the Crossfire Hurricane team found out about this from Durham, he became very upset. That's what Durham's talking about there. And amazingly, Comey, he's been asked about this once before Congress, and he was asked, like, do you recall being warned that by a referral memo that the Clinton campaign was plotting to frame Trump? This is again in 2016 when all this was getting off the ground. And Comey said, it doesn't ring any bells. So Comey claimed not to even remember that the conspiracy theory he was investigating of Trump as a Russian asset was really being concocted by his opponent, by Clinton. And Comey says it doesn't ring any bells. So that just underscores that Comey was a part of an operation to set up Trump and is now covering it up. And Durham, rather than interviewing Comey, he didn't, because Comey said no, and Durham didn't issue a subpoena of him. And that's an illustration of the fact that even though Durham uncovered some important or underscored some important revelations, he didn't exert his authority to get to the truth, to the point where Jim Comey, Peter Strzok, Andrew McCabe, all senior officials in the Trump-Russia probe, all of them declined to speak to them. He didn't subpoena them. So Durham caved ultimately, even though he's saying some important things. And just to underscore this, on the core allegation of Russian interference, Durham also didn't touch that. He left it unscathed. And he was asked during this hearing, like, did you look into the allegations that Russia hacked the DNC? He said, that was outside of my scope, which is not true. Because William Barr, who appointed Durham, says in his book that actually the hacking of the DNC was within Durham's scope. So Durham chose not to go there. And the reason he chose not to go there, I think, for the same reason he chose not to question these intelligence officials like Comey, is because he didn't want to really actually take on the national security state. He was willing to go to acknowledge what was already public, which is that this was a scam and that this was baseless and that this was a Clinton campaign operation. But he wouldn't challenge the Russian hacking allegation because this allegation has been so central, not just to, this partisan fight over Trump and framing as a Russian asset, but also, more importantly, criminalizing diplomacy with Russia, because the allegation that Russia took these emails, that was used to accuse Russia of invading our democracy, of committing a cyber 9/11, and that contributed to this climate, as Max and I were warning about tirelessly when it was happening, of criminalizing diplomacy with Russia, demonizing Russia, and setting the stage for things like the Ukraine proxy war, the escalation of the Ukraine proxy war. So here, for example, is Durham being questioned by Adam Schiff, and just listen to how meek Durham's answers are when Schiff is grilling him here. I mean, it's kind of obvious that Durham doesn't buy into the Russiagate narrative when it comes to Russian interference, but you don't see him really forcefully challenge it.
Remember what this is all about. Let me ask you, the Mueller investigation revealed that Russia interfered in the 2016 election in sweeping and systemic fashion, correct?
That's correct.
And Russia did so.
So notice how Durham accepts the premise of the Russiagate.
Well, it's completely distorted. But
the Mueller investigation didn't reveal anything. It claimed that Russia interfered in this sweeping and systemic way. But then you look at the evidence, as we have, and the evidence undermines that allegation. But Durham just didn't go there. So here's more.
Go through a social media campaign that favored Donald Trump and disparaged Hillary Clinton, correct?
The report says, yes.
So that's actually a tell that Durham can't buy into that one, because now Schiff is trying to say that Russia waged this sweeping interference campaign on social media, which, if you again look at the facts, it's a joke. There's a bunch of dumb memes that nobody saw that were barely about the election. And so Durham there says that's what the report says. He's actually not endorsing the allegation. But if he was honest, he would say, well, the report says that, but the evidence doesn't support that at all, because this was just a dumb meme operation that nobody saw. But again, he didn't have the courage to go there.
And Mueller found that a Russian intelligence service hacked computers associated with the Clinton campaign and then released the stolen documents publicly. Is that right?
That report speaks for itself as well.
Again, not a direct answer. The report speaks for itself.
Yeah.
So he's actually not endorsing it, but he's not challenging it either. And that's basically Durham. Unfortunately, I had been told so often throughout the course of his investigation by people who I think had reliable knowledge that he had gotten some really important stuff. And I don't doubt that he did, but he didn't do anything with it. He fell on his sword, and he squabbled, I think, a really big opportunity to hold people to account.
Definitely. Well, just the lack of subpoenas means that nothing consequential can come out of this. Essentially, the FBI issues some empty pledge for reform, and what are we getting out of this other than just kind of kicking the can down the road so the FBI can continue to abuse its power and authority? And it's really Jim Comey who needed to testify under oath.
And by the way, just one more thing. Another big factor, I think, why he didn't want to go there is if you go to the core allegation of Russian hacking and you look into the evidence, all the evidence undermines it. The CrowdStrike admitting that they had no evidence of Russian hacking. CrowdStrike, of course, being a Clinton campaign contractor who was hired to accuse Russia, just as Clinton was hiring Christopher Steele to frame Trump as a Russian asset. Anyway, also, if you really look into the evidence, then you're going to actually exonerate WikiLeaks, because WikiLeaks was accused of being a Russian puppet. And if you actually look at the allegations and the evidence undermines that claim, then you're also then challenging the establishment narrative that's been used to demonize Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, which is that WikiLeaks is just another Russian front, basically, and doing Russia's bidding. And Julian Assange has always said that his source for the emails was not any state party. including Russia. And he even offered to provide technical evidence that he said could rule out state parties like Russia as the source of the emails. But the FBI under Mueller had no interest in that whatsoever. They wouldn't even speak to Assange either. And so if Durham were to go there, he'd also be undermining the predominant narrative used to demonize WikiLeaks. And again, he just didn't have the courage to do that.
My favorite part was when the Internet Research Agency, which was supposedly responsible for this fake news attack and $160,000 of Facebook ads, actually decided to challenge the indictment through a holding company in court, and the U.S. didn't show up.
Mueller withdrew the case.
Mueller withdrew the case once they actually challenged the indictment. It's like
once they asked for discovery, Mueller withdrew the case and said that this case wouldn't, if we gave up this information, it would endanger national security. And that was an acknowledgement that case was such a joke. And of course, and again, during this hearing, Democrats, one of their lines of argument was like, Mr. Durham, didn't Mueller indict, dozens of people and bring all these cases? And like, that was their argument, that because of the volume of Mueller's indictments, that somehow made the Mueller investigation credible. As if all of a sudden, if you indict someone, that means that the underlying charge in the case is legitimate, which is odd for progressive Democrats, especially to make, because they're supposed to be critical of the criminal justice system. Anyway, but again, Durham could have mentioned, well, actually, this one major case he brought, Mueller withdrew it as soon as the Internet Research Agency challenged it. He didn't do that. He was really meek, and it's a wasted opportunity, but that's to be expected. It just underscores that we don't live under just a government elected by the people. The real institution is the permanent state, the national security state. And they certainly won this round. Even if they were embarrassed, the fact that no one was held accountable speaks to their power.
Well said. And we'll cover